Hi, welcome to another Power Blast podcast. Are you ready to finish the year strong? Well, you're about to learn some powerful ideas and strategies for achieving your goals, inspiring excellence, and creating radical results fast. Stay tuned. Hey, my friend, Perry Tinsley here, creator of the Power Blast podcast, The Power of Possibility, Passion, and Purpose. And we've got a special date that's coming up. It's September 22nd, and it's an important date because it begins the 100-day countdown of the year. 265 days will be gone, and the only thing now that matters is how you're going to use the last 100 days to finish strong. My wife introduced me to this guy. I've got a special guest here. She introduced me to this guy a few years ago, and she followed one of his programs and increased her income by $30,000. More on that story in a bit. But you're in for a real treat, as my special guest is Gary Ryan Blair. He's known as the Goals Guy and the #1 best-selling author of Everything Counts. Gary has cracked the code on what it takes to get 10 years of results in just 100 days. Pretty cool, huh? Gary uses a no-nonsense, highly focused, and disciplined approach to transform results for people all over the world. His clientele is a who's who in the areas of sports, business, entertainment, and politics. In fact, over 60% of the Fortune 500 companies use his products and services to build and sustain superior performance. This is going to be awesome. I hope you have a pen and paper nearby, as we're going to be discussing the secret of rapidly and significantly increasing your performance, how to make progress by large jumps instead of small increments, how to supercharge your career and dramatically increase your earning power, how to make a huge dent in the world and rip the lid off any past performance, and most importantly, how to finish the year strong. Let's get to it. Hey, Gary Ryan Blair. So glad to have you on here. Welcome to the Power Blast podcast, Power Possibility, Passion, and Purpose. I'm super excited to have you on here and learn from you and hear about your experience and to share it with our audience. So welcome.
Barry, thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's really cool. So I'm going to share a quick story with you, how I came upon the 100-day challenge. It was actually my wife. She had been listening or following somebody's blog that recommended this 100-day challenge that she had been going through. And my wife decided to sign up too and go through it. And of course, she asked me to join with her. And I was just too busy. I had other things to do. I have my own home business. I'm doing my own thing. But as Hillary's going through this challenge, I'm kind of overhearing some of the lessons that she's learning. I'm watching her take notes and start to apply some things. She had some big goals that year. There were a few fitness programs she wanted to accomplish. She had kind of gotten stuck in her career where she was looking just to change something up. I don't know if it was wanting to do something special within her career or totally do something different. But I know that she had big goals at the beginning of the year, and here she was rolling into, toward August, September, and hadn't really accomplished many of the things. So I knew she was frustrated. She heard about this 100-day challenge. She went for it. And so I'm hearing these nuggets, and she's sharing some of the lessons that your 100-day challenge had, and I'm like, oh, well, that's really good. That's really good. But here she is taking these notes. But as she's applying this, I'm watching her grow. I'm watching certain things happen, and we didn't make the connection right away that it was a 100-day challenge that made a shift for her. But at the end of that year, she accepted a new position for a career that took us actually to Canada within the same company, but she advanced into a new position. And as we're reflecting back, because a new 100-day challenge was coming about, and I thought, well, maybe I'll give it a shot this time, because I literally watched her give herself a $30,000 raise. And then when we were talking earlier, it was just a little while ago, And that's actually advanced to a $50,000 growth within that career. So it's just been so cool to watch it happen. We're in the middle of a new 100-day challenge, and I know there's another one coming. But just wanted to thank you for what you've created. It's just made a big difference for us.
Well, I'm happy, man. That is a great story. And tell your wife I said hello. But that's a wonderful story.
Yeah, so great. So anyway, I want to dig in. I want to hear about the 100-day challenge and share this with our audience. But before that, how about a quick story about Gary? How did you become known as the goals guy, and who were your influences to push forward?
Yeah, no problem at all. Everybody starts somewhere, and you always start at the back of the line, I suppose. But I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So my dad, although he wasn't enormously successful, he knew a lot about quarters, nickels, and dimes. And let me start there. I grew up with a father that was in the vending business, and from there he expanded into the car wash business, and then he also got into washing machines and so forth. So anything to do with spare change, he was all over. And there were a couple lessons learned there, because I remember around the dinner table we used to talk and say, that doctor down the street, he said as soon as he gets home, he's not making any more money. He said, but right now somebody's washing their clothes. Somebody is drinking one of our sodas. Somebody's eating a candy bar right now. And he knew early on that it was important to try to create and build a business where you could make money when you weren't working, if you will. So as I reflect back in terms of some of the earliest business lessons, it really came from around the dinner table and working with my dad going out on the truck. But from there, I took off on my own, man. I mowed lawn when I was a kid. I cleaned pools. I did all the dirty work that people didn't want to do, and I turned it into a business. And that business was called the Do It All Boys. And eventually I hired about 6 or 7 friends. We had a variety of different neighborhoods that we pretty much took good care of. And I saved up enough money to buy my first car cash, brand new one. Put myself in it really started off my life in a pretty darn good position, and went off to school. And the dream was to play professional football, but I unfortunately got injured, which happens. And but luckily for me, I wound up doing an internship. And at the time, you look back on life and you can only connect the dots backwards. But there was a divestiture that took place with AT&T. So you had these spinoffs with Sprint, with MCI, with AllNet, and a variety of others that were out there. And quite frankly, there were hundreds. And so now, AT&T gets split up and you have all these different potential services. Well, I did an internship for MCI just over the summertime. And I came back and I had to write a paper about it. And I did. And I said, one of the biggest untapped markets is for college kids. Because at the time, anyone listening now or any college kid can't relate to what I'm about to share. But, we used to pay 50, 60 cents a minute in order to call home. It was expensive when you were in college. And very often the phone was disconnected because we collectively didn't have enough money to pay for the bill. So that was a very common occurrence. And you were really careful as to who you called, when you called, because there were different time schedules and how long you were on the phone. Okay. So there was a legitimate cost savings. So the paper I wrote really was designed, or it was written about, college kids is an untapped market. And if I were to start a business, I would do this. And my professor kind of gave me a challenge, quite frankly. And I started it. I started the first long distance phone business while I was in school. It was called Collegiate Telephony Services. And I started around New York State. And it wasn't terribly sophisticated, but it worked. I went to dormitories, went to sororities, went to fraternities. I put posters up on lampposts and stuff like this. And I bought time, of all places. I bought time from MCI. I resold it back because they had a distributor program. And over the next 4 years, essentially, I drove around the country with a ragtag team of friends. And we sold a good percentage of the colleges. And then I actually sold that business when I was 25 to MCI, and was fortunate enough to become a millionaire in my early 20s. And that was when it was truly hard work. You didn't make it just from the stock market. This was blood, sweat, and a lot of tears. So that was the kickstart. And then from there, I started to date a gal whose father at the time, who's now passed, was a good mentor and friend, Paul Jernigan. He was a vice president for Dale Carnegie. And he ran all of sales, all of training, and so forth. He was a wonderful guy. And during the time that her and I were together, he was kind enough to put me through the different programs, the sales program, the management program, but even the Dale 14-week, I think it was, communication program. And I loved it. And that was my entree into professional development. It's kind of like my rich dad, poor dad type of relational story, if you will. And he taught me, he kind of put me through a little bit of finishing school and shared a lot with me. So Mary and I broke up. The relationship kind of went south. Paul and I, we kept in touch, but not as much. And I started to do some other things. So I bought into a couple of franchises. I had Jiffy Lubes at the time. I had a number of others. I've had my hands invested in real estate and so forth. But then as time had gone on, I really fell in love with the idea of learning and growing and so forth. And I reached out, strangely enough, about 2 weeks before he passed, to Earl Nightingale in Chicago. And I got him on the phone. I told him who I was. I said, listen, I'm serious about this. I said, I'd like to know, if you were starting out, who would you work with or so forth? And he made a personal phone call to Brian Tracy. And Brian and I connected. It's been a long, multi-decade relationship at this point in time. And I worked with him, helped him set up his distributor program, actually sold it as well. I did the same thing for Steve Covey with 7 Habits. So I had some experience with him. And I did a very similar thing with Tom Peters. So at the time, you're going back in the late 80s, early 90s, the 3 preeminent names in the industry, I was fortunate enough to work right alongside with them and get a real good understanding of the speaking, the consulting, the publishing side of the business. So my advice to anyone who's listening right now is, find good mentors, because you can get decades worth of knowledge in a very, very compressed period of time. And that's what I did. I truly went to graduate school for these guys. Anyway, so from there, that was a launch pad to go out and start the Goals Guy. And the Goals Guy was all of these guys, and still many people speak about goal setting and strategic planning and so forth, but no one really hung their shield on it and specialized and built an entire empire business around it. And, now it's been 24 years, I suppose, and it's been a good run. A little over 5 million books sold. I've got, the 100-day challenge, which we'll talk about. We've got a little over 600,000 participants in it. It's probably the fastest growing personal development program in the world. There's a lot of good stuff going, but again, a lot of hard work and hustle. It's just, that stuff never ends. So that's a quick synopsis.
Yeah, that is a lot of history, but boy, what's some mentors? And that's really good advice, because as we're always reaching out and trying to learn. We love the personal development space as well. I know a lot of times, even this podcast started off, more fitness focused, health focused, but a lot of it's turned into, personal development, personal growth, mindset, those sort of things, because they all work together, especially if you're looking to advance in career and business and stuff like that. So and I love the 100-day challenge. I mean, when I'm going through what I'm going through right now versus a few years ago, it almost seems to keep getting better. I love how polished it is. I love the lessons. I love how to dig in. But let's talk about that. The 100-day challenge. I had mentioned just before we got on screen here that there's an important date coming up called, for September 22nd. And so that's probably not unless somebody's got a birthday, it's probably not super significant to somebody, but it really is significant. Can you give a little take on that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to, and I appreciate it. And it really brings us to the genesis of the program. And in all honesty, the program really began back in the 80s because my model for selling long distance services was based on time poverty. And I guess what I'm about to say, I think is very true for just about every business, is that most of your big breakthroughs and solutions are born out of necessity more than anything else. And whether that's cures for cancer or cures for medicine, for health, or whatever the case might be. In my case, I was in school as a student, and I had a limited amount of time with which to be able to build this business. So strangely enough, I learned pretty quickly that it was better to sell to a group than it was to make one-on-one presentations. So I would organize with the RAs, and I would bring in, everybody in the dorms. I had 300 or 400 people at a time, and I was signing them up. So I in many cases, I could only work on a Saturday or even on a Sunday. but I would line up 2 or 3, maybe 4 dorms if I could, at different colleges, and do group presentations, and multiple if I needed to. So long story short, what I was learning real quickly was that I was making more money on a single Saturday than most of your average salespeople that were working for MCI and Sprint and AllNet and all of these over the course of a month. And I was doing this in my early 20s. And again, I stumbled across it, but it was like that made sense. The next was because I hired a few of my friends that it was important for us to work in sprints. So we had challenges. And the whole idea was, okay, the winner, I did everybody in teams of 2. I said, the winning team essentially on me basically gets, a couple $100 for dinner or a bottle of champagne or anything along that way, or a couple of cases of beer, whatever you wanted. But essentially, here's $200. How are we going to spend it? And I found that there was tremendous value in competition, in challenges, and especially, young guys that wanted, essentially bragging rights. So that's kind of where it started. And every business I've ever been involved with has incorporated some form of leveraging technology, of speaking to large groups and making large sales with very, very little effort and little time. Okay. So I go further, and as time had gone on, what I've come to realize, because I've always been involved in sports and just about everything you could possibly imagine, I've always loved the competitive mindset and the idea of sports. So my thinking, very simple, is that there's really, people make strategy real difficult, but fundamentally, there's only 2 forms of strategy. There's offense and defense. That's it. And offense is designed to put points on the board, to move the ball down the field, to move the needle, to win, quite frankly. Defense essentially has a specific set of strategies and goals, but that is to prevent the offense from scoring, moving the ball down the field, moving the needle, and winning. That's just the way it is. And what I found in life as I look back, and I still do now, is that you're either playing offense or defense. And sadly, the vast majority of people have a really weak game. They play a real weak offense, and they're predominantly playing what I call protective posturing. They're ambivalent. If they commit, it's just a little. They're not fully engaged. They just don't go all in, if you will. So my thinking was, when I came around to creating the 100-day challenge, I knew I wanted to create something unique and different. Now, if you don't mind, I want to get into the framework of the program, but I want to give everybody a background understanding of it. As a marketer, I've always felt that one of the things you need to do is to create something where that completely eliminates the competition. If you do that before you even begin or launch, you're in a much better position. So I like evergreen events. I like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Groundhog's Day, Christmas, and Hanukkah, and all of those things, because they're predictable evergreen events. You know they're going to happen, and they're never going to change. So I like stability and consistency. That being said, I knew I wanted a date. I wanted an evergreen event that I could launch on, but it needed to be unique. It needed to be my own Groundhog's Day, my own Mother's Day, my own, whatever it was. So September 22nd was unclaimed or uncharted territory. So rather than do a 90-day challenge, which there were plenty of, and people talked about the quarter, I focused in on that number 100. And there's significance to the number 100 as well. But so September 22nd represents the final 100 days of the year. Now, every good program, and I think every good business, needs a story. Well, this story is pretty simple. 265 days, 100 down, 100 days to go. How are you doing? What's the score? And if you're below target, you have to be mature enough and realize that your current strategies after 265 days already has you behind target. If you continue to doing exactly what you've done so far year to date, you're guaranteed to be, the only thing that's guaranteed is you're going to be further behind. So here's a solution. So the message was real simple, was this is a hyper-aggressive program built around the idea of a very strong, relentless offense for 100 days. And, if people got behind it, what type of changes could they make? So as time has gone on, I've refined it and refined it and refined it. And I think it's the finest program that's ever been created, quite frankly. And I mean it any time. There's a lot of love and a lot of time and a lot of money went into it. And I'm very, very proud of the final outcome.
Yeah, I marvel because I'm into technology. I'm into video creation and delivering messages to people. And I just marvel at how clean, polished, focused, even just the wording is just so clear and the message gets across very simply yet direct. And I appreciate that, because I tend to be a type of person that can get scattered pretty easily. And watching these, it helps me dial in, especially whatever the topic is for the day. It helps me want to pay it forward for others. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just learned a great lesson. How can I turn around and teach this to somebody? So I applaud you for what you've done and done that. And so why is it important for people to want to finish the year strong? That's kind of our theme here, right?
It really is. And well, here's the funny part. One of the things I always hear people say is, what do I need to be doing differently at this time of the year, now that we're at the last 100 days? And my answer, it may sound sarcastic, but it's true. You need to be doing the same exact things you should have been doing back in January.
Yeah.
And what are those things? You need to be focused. You need to be disciplined. You need to be consistent. You need to be executing. And fundamentally, you've fallen short somewhere on those key components. Anyway, so looking at it from this standpoint is, let's take the word finish strong. And I think we need to open the container a bit, because we have a tendency of reflecting on it and think about just the end of the year this time. But the fact is, at the end of this call, we're going to have a finish. We're going to have an end. It's either going to be fast or strong. It's going to be good or bad. It's going to be exciting or it's going to do something. But there's never a phone call. There's never an email. There's never a meeting. There's never a day. There's never a year, a month, or quarter that does not provide you with the opportunity to finish. You're going to finish conversations. You're going to finish phone calls. You're going to finish meetings. You're going to finish all of these things. So finishing strong should become a discipline for you, not just a once a year thing that you focus on, or just when you talk about at the end of a sporting event. This should be part of everybody's modality and strategic way of thinking. The other side of it also is, how do you start fast? And my thinking is real simple, is that, we all have adjectives. And what I mean by that is there's always a beginning, middle, and an end. And there's always a start, a middle, a finish, and so forth. So what words would you use to describe how you start your day? Is it fast or slow? Is it focused or unfocused? Is it disciplined or undisciplined? Do you have a plan or not? And so forth. And the same thing when you're finished. Most people, unfortunately, finish weak. They don't end with an exclamation or with some kind of a win or so forth. They kind of mail it in many cases. So my thinking is, how do you go about doing it? And we can get into strategies at this point in time, but that's just kind of an overarching theme, that there's never going to be a day, a week, a month, an email, or phone call that doesn't provide you with the opportunity to finish strong. So we need to look at it that way, because it's that important.
That's really good. So I've got a little, let's see if I can get my camera up here. One of the things that's been threaded throughout the fitness community that I'm part of are these three words. I love it.
Yes.
Decide, commit, succeed. And I think sometimes the decision part is easy. It is just a middle part that people tend to struggle with. That I don't know where end up getting sidetracked, or especially the beginning of the year. How many people are starting on these big goals? A lot of times people are working on health and fitness, right? By week 2, it's distraction city. Didn't deliver, and didn't necessarily start as fast as I wanted, and definitely not finishing. And sometimes people just kind of ignore it and just brush it to the side for the rest of it. But do you have any thoughts on that, or just where people tend to fail, or tend to just get sidetracked?
That's all right. Well, listen, I can appreciate what you just shared. I think I've seen that with P90X in a few places. But the fact is, it's very true. Decision precedes action. You will not get in great physical shape until you decide. You will not get rich until you decide to get rich. You will not really have a great marriage until you decide and make it a priority. So decision always precedes action. And as simple as that is, man, there's a lot of people who just don't really make a decision. If you look at the word commit, commit or whatever, but the commitment, quite frankly, is just an ongoing reinforcement of a decision that you made previously. That's really what commitment is all about. But built in, as you're well aware, into the 100-day challenge is something called the Integrity Pledge. And I think this might be a good place to interject that. When I built the program, what I was interested in was, and by the way, here's the way my mind works. I always ask adverse questions first. I think the best way to diagnose a situation is to ask yourself, why is it not working? So if everyone already knows that goal setting is important, why don't most people achieve their goals? It's just what it is. And fundamentally, the answer at the end of the day really comes down to a very low level of personal integrity. Now, people don't like to hear that because when you think about the word integrity, you're really touching deep part of the soul. But let me poke at that for a minute. So my solution to it was multifaceted. One of the most important one goes back to the Boy Scouts, in which I was in, but it was some kind of a pledge. So for me, the pledge was, if you make a promise, you keep it. If you make a commitment, you honor it, and if you set a goal, you achieve it. Let's just focus on the commitment part, because this will answer all of those others. The reason why that integrity pledge is important, and the issue with commitment, is this. If you look at, and here in the United States, we're at a point now where over 50% of all first marriages end in divorce. Okay. Now, the biggest commitment you can make to a human being is I will be with you till death do us part, sickness, health, whatever the case might be. Now, let's just stop there and say, if the single biggest commitment that you can make to another human being in front of your family, and wherever it is, your God, and it's broken by the majority of people, then what do you think the possibilities are that people may not commit or follow through on a diet, on a sales plan or whatever? To me, I think commitment is not just a problem, it's an epidemic. And the biggest problem that people have is they are unwilling to commit. They're unwilling to commit to a goal, to a person, to a project, to a book, to a goal, to an outcome, a whole host of things. And if you go and you look at just the opposite direction and you say to yourself, what is it the most successful people do differently? And you could say it's this, it's that, and everything else. You want to know what it is? They're committed. They're committed. You start to look at the founders of Beachbody. You were just holding it up. They're committed to optimal fitness and providing with world-class programs in order to do this. A guy like Jerry Lewis, he spent 50 years of his life. He was committed to that telethon and helping these kids in muscular dystrophy. And you start to go through, you start to look at it, whether it's Bill Belichick, with the Patriots, so he was committed to being the best possible coach that he could be. That's the way that it goes. And what you'll find in most people's lives, they're real soft on commitment. So I wanted to make that a centerpiece of the program for the simple reason that if I could help you to honor your commitments and keep your promises and achieve your goals, you'll be much more successful. Now, let's just talk about the promise part of it. People, because you mentioned about health, this one may hurt as well, but it's the truth. When it comes to people, whether they're being broke or whether they're overweight or what have you, there's two games that people play. It's either what I call conversion or perpetuation. I believe that everybody, your job is to become a conversion expert. And we have a tendency of using the word conversion, associating it towards a website, towards visitors, where you convert prospects into customers. But you want to convert debt into wealth. You want to convert fat into muscle. You want to convert problems into solutions. And I can go on. But the biggest problem is that people perpetuate problems. They perpetuate obesity. They perpetuate high blood pressure. They perpetuate debt. They perpetuate a lot of things. And this is where I said they're uncommitted and they play a weak offense. And as a result of that, they perpetuate weakness and themselves in the same position at 50 than they were at 25. And that game goes on. So I prefer to teach the game, and this is what I taught is that the 100-Day Challenge is a rapid conversion program. It's really what it's all about, not just goal achievement, but it's how do you convert your goals, your dreams, your ideas, your intentions into a profitable outcome and do it quickly. And I'll give you enough examples in a few minutes to show people how they can do it a lot faster than they can imagine. But all of these things are very, very, very important and intertwined. They really are. And I spent a long time thinking about it and working on it and so forth. But yeah.
Wow. Man, I feel like I already got my lessons for the day. So does that think performance gaps? I know you've talked about that before.
Sure.
Can you explain what that means? And I'm sure that all just ties right into here.
Yeah, it does. There's what's called performance gaps and what I call closing speed. Now I'll connect the two of them. A gap essentially is the distance between where you are and where you want to be. Make it real simple. And some people, the gaps are much bigger. It's just the way that it goes, whether it's weight, whether it's debt, or whatever the case might be. But, people are going to have small gaps or large gaps. my job really is to help you to close the gap quickly. And that's really what it is that, if you think about it, you want to close the gap between A and B. Now, here's the thing about it. Football season is starting right now. And what I love about football season is that you will see some astonishing professional, safeties and linebackers and stuff. And the guys who are really quick on the field have what's called closing speed. So when a quarterback throws the ball, that they have such good reaction time that they could actually close the gap between the ball and the receiver and block it or intercept it. Okay. What people need to be able to work on, and again, this is another area where they're weak, is they have they have weak closing skills or closing speed. And what I want to teach is, and share a few ideas, is how can you accelerate your closing speed? That's really important, because once you're able to do that, you can prove to yourself that you could solve a problem quickly, achieve a goal quickly, connect the dots between a cause and effect and bring it to an outcome, or a profitable one quickly. Is an extraordinary skill to be able to develop, learn, master, and teach. It really is.
Wow. Okay. Some examples. dig right in. I know that you're probably itching to get to a few.
Well, yeah. No, I'll be happy to. Here, I'll rattle off a few, because and this might be startling for people, because we have been brought up with the idea that life is a marathon, not a sprint. That's false. We have been brought up with the idea that patience is a virtue. My feeling is, I think it's not. I think impatience is a virtue, and I want to prove it to you right now. And I think all of us have been through what I basically call kind of a conspiracy. It's a multi-generational conspiracy designed in many ways for us to think small and to subjugate our goals and our dreams and so forth. And we just take things for the most part at face value. And our parents are repeating what their grandparents told them and their grandparents told them and so forth. And I'll tell you this much, the conversation around the dinner table between what I grew up with, or maybe you did, and I think what you'll find that the conversations behind Bill Gates' table was a lot different than what I grew up with. And I'd say that's probably true for most of us. Okay, let's give a couple of examples now. When I talk about life, that you could accelerate and move things quickly, we need evidence. So let me give that to you. All right, you turn on a TV show and you see Extreme Home Makeover. In most cases, some mansions could take years or decades. There's a church in Portugal that's been worked on now for 900 years. It's still not finished. You go through and you start to realize these guys were building a full, 2,500 square foot home, move-in ready in 7 days. That was accelerating the rate between cause and effect. You can build a move-in ready home in 7 days. They proved that. Okay. Then you turn on Dancing with the Stars. You can take people who never danced before in their life. And one season is about 14 weeks, 16 weeks. Guess what? These people, basically, they're competitive ballroom dancers at the end of that season. It's extraordinary. And so I'll come back to each one of these in a minute. Let's go through a few more. P90X is a good example. Some people take 20 years to lose 20 pounds, but they got people basically losing 50, 60 pounds in a matter of 90 days and going from fat and flabby to firm and fantastic and looking 10 years younger in 90 days. This is true. This is the way it works. Here's even the best example. Mother Nature. I have a house in upstate New York. And I'll tell you this much. In one season, when they talk about an idea for sowing and reaping, you plant seeds in one season and you reap a harvest the next. A season is 90 days. So you can plant your seeds and reap a harvest. And if anybody who's been through a tough winter, I'll tell you this much, your winter may come to a close, let's say in February. But you know what? Come March or April, 60, 90 days down the road, the colors of blooming in terms of the colors, the trees and so forth, it changes the entire landscape where it goes from kind of gray and dull. All of a sudden it's majestic. It's beautiful. It's astonishing. Mother Nature is in the transformation business. Mother Nature is in the acceleration business. Dancing with the Stars is the acceleration business. They're converting non-dancers into dancers. And the same thing goes with even military. They could take somebody who goes into boot camp who's fat and over shape and never held a gun, and they're a lean, mean fighting machine after one rotation. So that's more than enough evidence for people to wake up and realize that you've been sold a bunch of nonsense, folks. You really have. It is possible for you to turn your life around quickly. And I believe in the power of 100-day sprints. The problem is that people don't take it seriously. So they'll start maybe weak, and then they'll run into an and they'll take a day off. So let's talk about compounded. We all know, and I get tired. Sometimes I get a little bit agitated by it because it's an old Bruce Lee quote: to know something, but not necessarily to apply it. It means it's irrelevant. You don't understand it. You really don't. Knowledge is the truest form of understanding and learning. Okay. It's one thing to understand the importance of applied compounded behavior, compounded effort. It's an entirely different thing to actually do it. And that means is, if you want to get some great looking abs, let's say you're just 10 pounds overweight, you want to have a six pack because you got summer coming. In 100 days, if you did 20 minutes of abs workout, you'd be ripped. I mean, nonstop, and let it just go for it. You'd be ripped. The problem is people will do it a day, then the next day they'll mail it in, they'll do this and that. And they don't compound and build upon the day before's performance. The same thing with sales calls. You want to improve your sales funnel, I'll tell you this much. Set a goal, making 20 calls a day, and do it again the next day. Don't do 20 today and 3 tomorrow. Hit the number, and what will happen, the compounded effect will take in. The same is true. We understand it when it comes to money, because you could put money in and it compounds every single day. Behavior is exactly the same way. So if you look at life as a sprint and realize in a short period of time you can transform your life, you really can. And I've been doing this now for over a decade, and I've seen people pay off mortgages. I've seen people become debt free. I've seen people. I have evidence. I'm speaking of this not in any way, shape, or form to sound arrogant. I want to state that this is possible, that you can do this, but it requires, you're only as good as your system allows. And the 100-day challenge is probably the best system you're going to find. It just really is.
Yeah. So I think for, there's probably some skeptics out there that are going, okay, really? Can I really get 10 years worth of results in just 100 days? But I mean, look at the examples you just gave with being able to accelerate that idea of compounding time. I think I shared that with a group the other day, specifically saying with one of our fitness programs that it just, when you gave that message, it really clicked for me that I was like, oh my gosh, that compounded time, because my first 90-day program, which was not a P90X program, but same trainer, I got back to where I was 13 years prior. It was like literally going back 1 year's time.
Sure.
Every single week, a 13-week program. So I can definitely see the evidence of what you're talking about. So any further thoughts on compressing time and the results than, what method actually makes it easier?
Yeah. It's, again, remember earlier we talked about, people say or do things a little differently. There's a terminology that most of us are not familiar with. It's basically called force multipliers. And force multiplier essentially is using a certain amount of effort in order to multiply your outcome. So let's start with the word multiplier and then reverse it. In life, there's really a couple of games. You got addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Then you can get into what's called quantum physics, where you're making huge leaps. The fact is, most of us have grown up playing the game of addition. We have been taught and learned that life gives you a cost of living allowance, that growth goes in steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, that this is the way that you grow money, this is the way that you work your career, this is the way things work. Well, I got news for you. The rich think differently. They don't believe in incremental growth. They believe in quantum growth. They choose to play multiplication where most people play addition. Now, there are different tools and there are different strategies between playing, and different belief systems between playing addition and playing multiplication. And then if you really want to play big, quantum growth, that's a whole different game. And I don't want to go there because that'll take people, and spin your head completely. But that's where the big boys are playing. Okay, so let's talk about this idea of force multiplier. So you want to play a game of multiplication. You don't want to play addition anymore. How do you play multiplication? You need to look at the tools and the strategies you're using. And the best example I could give you is go into your garage, and let's say you're going to put up a wall or do some kind of a home housework. Maybe even put a knob on a door. Get yourself an old, a regular screwdriver, okay, or a Phillips head, and you could sit there and turn it and turn it and turn it. It may take you 10 minutes in order to put it up. Go get yourself a power drill. It'll take you about, 3.5 seconds to have that thing on. It's just the way that it goes. And let's look at the power drill for a minute, because what's happening here is by using force multiplier strategies or force multiplier tools, what a power saw is, a power drill is, with any of these things, they allow you, or should I say, they are the textbook definition of leverage. And leverage is all about maximum effort, or should we say maximum output with minimal input. The problem with most people is they put maximum input and they get minimal output. The rich do it differently. And this is what I'm suggesting. This is what the whole 100-day challenge is based upon, is how do you put in truly, the smallest amount of effort in order to get the maximum gain. And that requires you to think smarter, to use better tools, but more importantly, to use better strategies to get the job done. And that's where I've spent, that's the place where I live and what I share with my clients.
Nice. Yeah, really good visual there. So, okay, so this may sound naive, but what are specific things that people need to focus on in order to finish the year strong?
Well, the most important is just the end, is the deadline. So let's talk about that. There's two types of deadlines, and it's as simple as this. There's an internally enforced deadline and there's an externally enforced deadline. Most people, unfortunately, this even goes back to Freud. We talked about his pleasure principle, and he talked about we call a kind of a locus of control. And you want to have an internal one, but as much as people would love to be driven by their own needs and desires and so forth, most of us are driven externally. We're looking for, listen, the Instagrams of the world and so forth validate that argument that people want, they're counting likes and they're counting views, and this stuff is so important. And so they're looking for external validation that what they have to say has value. Why do you need that? You're either putting stuff out that has value or you're not. You shouldn't need this. Anyway, so when I talk about external or internal deadlines, most of us are driven externally. We have credit card bills, we have student loans, we have mobile gas cards or Sunoco or what have you. We've got mortgages and everything else. And then you go to play tennis. There's a deadline. You have to show up on time. You lose court time. You got a yoga class coming up. You've got to be there on time. Karate class and so forth. Heck, if you even go to a car wash, there's going to be, you put in 4 quarters and you got to use it in 60 seconds before it runs out, and you move fast and so forth. We respect and honor and pay attention to externally enforced deadlines. What do? And deadlines are designed, think about it, to bring honor to your commitments and to create urgency in your actions. That's really what they are. The problem is most people don't take their own deadline seriously. And I think if they did, things would change. And you need to put deadlines on your behavior, deadlines on your actions and so forth, and you need to enforce them. So you start with 100 and you work your way backwards. And like any good plan, you kind of think about what's at the end and break it down into the smallest components and then work your plan moving forward. That's one of a number of things that you need to do. But I got to tell you, if people get in the habit of honoring internally enforced deadlines, your life can change immediately. But I was saying something before, and I just want to come back to it. And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I want to speak the truth, because this goes back to the idea of the integrity pledge and about honoring commitments and promises. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, you know what the problem with perpetuation of debt, of weight, and so forth, what that's all about? That's 20 years of broken promises. That's really what it is, 30 years of broken promises. And if you really want to know how to change your life, start honoring your promises. And you start making small ones. And you say to yourself, you know what, today I'm going to eat this, drink this, do this, or whatever the case might be, or stop spending this, or what have you. And the people have corrupted their own internal, we talk about a physical immune system. You have a psychological immune system that works the same way. It needs to be strong and dynamic and viable. And when you dishonor your commitments, when you don't honor your promises or keep them or so forth, what happens is you're your own Benedict Arnold. You're sabotaging your own psychological immune system, and you are weakening your power base. And your power base, quite frankly, is between your ears. And that's where we get many things wrong. So it's important to realize that all change begins with honoring your promises, honoring your commitments. It really does. And it doesn't take long for you to go from small to large. You just need to do it for a couple of days, and you feel good about yourself. And all of a sudden, you feel like a better human being, quite frankly. And you feel more confident. You feel more comfortable in your own skin. You know you're bringing honor to what you said you're going to do. And you could quickly leapfrog a small commitment or promise to a bigger one real quickly. This doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process, but it's got to start by honoring the promises and the deadlines that you make throughout the day. That by 2 o'clock today, I'll have this done. By 3 o'clock today, I'll write 500 words. Whatever goal you're working on. So yeah.
Yeah, it's giving yourself small wins, isn't it? I mentor a lot of people with. I think sometimes it's a knee-jerk reaction for people to realize that they've gotten in the habit of not committed for themselves. And so
Sure.
they will talk themselves out of starting something because they've got this, I've quit on myself so many times. This will probably be the next time. But at least in my experience, and maybe you've seen some other things, is having that person is like, well, let's just commit for this short period of time and get you small victories and build that momentum and build that integrity to yourself, that belief in yourself, that to change that story that you've been telling yourself for the past 20 years. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, it is. That small little acronym on ACT, action changes things. It really does. Here's the thing. I always hear people say, it takes a long time to change. And the answer is it doesn't. It takes an instant to change. You make a decision that this is going to be my new reality. It takes a lifetime to reinforce it because you've got to implement new behaviors and so forth. But fundamentally, the change process begins as you showed up with that sign before, with making a decision. What new reality do you want? And then everything that you do from here on out, it must be with the intent to bring honor to that decision. Yeah.
Wow, way cool. Okay, so let's talk about the 100-day challenge. It's coming up. Officially kicks off on the 22nd, if I'm correct. So people would obviously want to get going, before that. Is it best to go at it individually, as a family, as a team? I know Hillary and I eventually went as together, but she's the one that started first. But or maybe even a company. Thoughts?
Yeah, the answer is yes to all of them. But it's situational. If somebody happens to be, depending on where your situation is, you may be on your own. You got to go with it. I think optimally, where you'll get the best benefit is when you have an additional support system, other people going through it with you, where you could hold each other accountable. You have a real life competition and challenge where you're checking in on a consistent basis. You're applauding, and environment is everything. So if you could get a few other people to go through with you, you're going to be in much, much better shape. And that's why I love selling to corporations. I love selling in groups of churches. I love selling groups of, people that are on different teams or what have you, because collectively there's power in a group much more than just an individual. But still, anyone's going to benefit. I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, you're so right. Currently, it's kind of funny that the 100 is here because the groups that we do for our fitness programs or nutrition programs, we run online communities and we all go through it together. And we happen to be right smack dab in a 100 workout challenge. So to have this marriage with the 100-day challenge that you have it's just kind of ironic. It's like, wow, I love the way that turned out. So who most will, benefit by participating, and who's going to least benefit?
Sure. The people who are going to benefit are the ones who are truly, like all the things we discussed, that are willing to make the decision to go all in for 100 days. So you got to make a commitment. You got to be willing to work it hard. But more importantly, anything else, you've got to be deeply committed to a specific goal or some type of change that you want to make in a relatively short period of time. And I'm telling you, your reality could be very, very different just 100 days from now in any area. I don't care what it is, but you've got to be willing to give it a go. In terms of the person who is not going to, if you've got a habit of starting and stopping, if you're second guessing right now or they're ambivalent, I wouldn't do it. And here's the reason why. My style and the way the program is put together, it'll run you over. It'll be like a freight train coming at you every day. And you're just going to step aside and say, I'm going to let this one pass. And the one day turns into a second and into a third. So mentally, you need to go into this program and say, you know what, I'm all in for 100 days and I'm going to give this thing everything I've got. So that's the right way to approach it.
Yeah, I have to agree. When I watched Hillary go through it, I was really impressed. She did all the 100 days, but I know that I was a dabbler. Right, the very first time, I was just catching little pieces of it, and I didn't. When I heard some of the powerful messages, I'm like, "This is cool. I want to give it a full focus." So it wasn't until a year later when the next 100-day challenge came up that we committed to,
Sure.
really put the time in, and it did make a difference for my, moving forward my business. So I think this is the fourth time that we've gone through it. So and I think there's value in going through and challenging yourself in 100-day, different 100-day challenges, maybe having different goals. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I always tell people, you should look at this and do it probably three times, at least two times a year, sometimes three. But maybe do it the first 100 days and the last 100 days is a good way to approach it, or do it the first quarter and the third quarter, whatever works for you. But think about, what are, going back to deadlines. Some people may have anniversaries in June or July. Some may have, important milestones. So that may be the driver for you to want to get something accomplished. So I think you need to personalize it, sit back and say to yourself, when would be the optimal time for me to go through this, and what type of a outcome am I looking for? I've got a lot of people going through and tying things to anniversaries or their daughter's wedding or some kind of a big event or a high school graduation coming up and you want to look great and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with that, man. I think whatever the motivation is, God bless you. Go for it. And if that's what it's going to take, let's do it together.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I think what's, at least in my experience, and what people I think should realize is you go through this 100-day challenge, you accomplish a big goal or two or maybe even three, and that takes you to a new level, new belief system, you've got a big victory. And of course, you're going to want another goal, another way to level up. Whatever, it could be in the same arena, it could be another thing. But now you've got proof there that, oh my gosh, not only I accomplished the 100-day challenge itself, but I took on whatever the big, scary, uncomfortable push that I had, and literally compressed time and made it happen. So now you've got the validation and the proof going forward and ready to take on something else. And I love that you said finish strong, finish the year strong, but now you've got another, the opportunity, because always the beginning of the year, most people are setting some sort of goal. So to actually have a 100-day challenge to start the year, I think that's brilliant. Thank you.
It is a good way, but here's I think probably the best way to look at it. We've all heard that old saying, the gift that keeps on giving and so forth, and sometimes it's related towards whatever. There's nothing better, and I think nothing more attractive than seeing a very confident and competent human being in action. When you see a performer, a singer, or an actor, or whatever, or somebody, or attorney, somebody who walks into a room and commands it and who gets the job done, it's breathtaking. It's really attractive. I think the greatest gift you can give yourself is a gift of confidence. And when you all of a sudden start setting and achieving, and you can connect the dots, and you know how to do this and get this stuff done, confidence is the gift that keeps on giving. Because once you get and you achieve something, you want to give yourself another challenge, give yourself another gift. And it's not only for you, but it inspires people around you. And I think that's probably one of the greatest benefits that you get from this program, along with many others. But you change internally. Your intestines, become a little bit stronger and tighter and vigorous. And I think that's a darn good thing. I really do.
That's a good point. Thank you so much. So how can people get this? I'm going to put a link definitely in the show notes here, and we'll be sharing it on social media. And I believe I believe that I can share a coupon code with somebody to get a little bit of a discount. But is there a deadline for enrollment?
Well,
and what's the investment? I guess I should say. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. During this challenge, we'll put in somewhere between 30 to 40,000 people. So we've got a pretty good net. The investment, I've kept it small. I could sell this for quite a bit, but quite frankly, it's $177. So less than $2 a day. and get yourself what I feel is probably the best training in the world and the best system you'll ever have. So we've scaled it, and we priced it in a point where it eliminates the excuses. So that's it there. In terms of deadline, enrollment's open for a small window. So, we open up on September 22nd. We close it right at the beginning of October. So, that small spot with which to be able to get in there. And by the way, if by chance you enroll on September 25th, are you going to miss 3 days? No. You'll start at the very beginning. Your end date will be like January 3rd. That's all that'll happen. So we have a very narrow window for people to make a decision to get involved, and let's hit it hard.
Right on. Gary, I so appreciate you for coming on, for sharing those words of wisdom. It's great hearing your story. And I look forward to, I'm finishing my current 100-day challenge, but I look forward to just sharing this with so many people, and even getting a group of us to go through it together and to see what we can accomplish. So appreciate you, man.
Absolute pleasure.
That was absolutely incredible. I'm sure you took a bunch of notes, and if you didn't, you probably want to go to listen to this podcast again, rewind it, pause, get things down, and really crush the rest of this year. So if you're interested in doing the 100-day challenge with a bunch of us, what you do is go to the website putyourselffirst.com/100-day challenge. All one word, the number 100-day challenge. Putyourselffirst.com/100-day challenge. And you can use my special coupon code or promo code, if you will. It's Integrity152, all one word, lowercase Integrity152. That will knock $25 off access to the 100-day challenge. And once you're there, please email me, perrytinsley@gmail.com, and let me know that you're in. We can get a group together. We can support each other and motivate each other all the way across the rest of this year and catapult things into the beginning of next year. So anyway, I hope this is helpful, and you absolutely rock for being a subscriber. If you found this valuable, please share it with anybody you know who could benefit. And thanks for getting over to your podcast app and giving this a rating and review so more people can find us. You absolutely rock. I already said that, right? Well, you do. That's all I have for this week. And as always, remember, it's never too late. We'll see you next week.